You're listening to another episode of the Young Investors Podcast, so sit back and relax as myself, Brandon, and my buddy Hamish discuss the latest in the world of finance and stock market investing. Now, a quick reminder before we get into the podcast is that nothing in this podcast should be taken on as personal financial advice. If you're ever unsure about your finances or investing and you need some help, make sure you reach out to a qualified financial advisor. But with all that said, let's get into another episode of the Young Investors Podcast. All right, guys, welcome back to the Young Investors Podcast. We're back for another week. Getting towards the end of the week. It's the end of the week, the end of the year. Man, my brain's everywhere today.
Well, it is the end of the week as well.
Such little sleep.
So,
that's true.
yes.
That's true, but it's just not what I meant to say.
No.
How you going, mate?
I'm doing well. Yeah, we're getting towards the end of the year. I'm looking forward to taking a little bit of a break. The end of the year is always interesting because we get to kind of look back at the year and plan forward, and it's chaotic with content, but it's also a time to just reflect on, where we're going as well. So it is it's a bit of a change of pace, I guess. But yeah, going well. We had the Rask event last week, and I got to catch up with some finance creators that I'd already met before and some new ones as well. So that was super exciting. That was fun.
Yeah, that was great. We met Owen and Kate. I shouldn't start naming people because I'm never
go down the list.
Forget someone. Who else do we meet? Matt from Aussie Firebug. We met Evan Lucas. We met Victoria Devine, Glenn James, Bryce and Alec from Equity Mates. We met Queenie, Pablo, Tash. I mean, some of these guys we knew already, but these are all the people that went along. Yep. And I'm sure there are other people that I'm just not remembering right now because I'm very tired. But yeah, that was good. It was really good fun. Yeah, had a blast. How'd you find it? How'd you find the event?
Yeah, it was great. It was interesting to hear from lots of speakers. We got to see Lee Matthews, football player from
AFL legend for those that are listening internationally.
Yeah, we got to hear
Australian
him
football
speak,
legend.
and a bunch of people spoke, and it was also good just to network with a bunch of you guys. Were there as well. So. Yeah, it was good fun. Yeah, very tired this week after all that networking, as we were kind of saying.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Yeah, it is draining. Like, it's great. Don't get. I'm definitely not complaining.
No,
and it was awesome to meet all of you guys that came up and said you're fans of the channel, our channels, or the podcast. So yeah, thanks very much if you came up and said hello. But yeah, just generally having like big events like that. And just doing so much talking and social interaction. You do like go home and you just fall asleep straight away, don't you? But yeah, no, it's really good fun. Had a blast. And yeah, thanks to Owen and Kate and the whole Rask Australia team for putting it on. That's they're very generous people over there at Rask. Yeah. They just want everyone to have a good time.
Yeah,
you can definitely tell that was the kind of plan at the event. So they did a great job.
Yeah.
All right, definitely. Hamish. Did you see this news story? SEC this morning?
Yeah.
I don't know if this is this morning or yesterday.
From one group of influencers to another. This is
from a good group of influencers to a not so good group of influencers. Yeah, the SEC charged 8 social media influencers in $100 million stock manipulation scheme.
Yeah, geez.
It's happening, Hamish.
That is massive. Yeah, it is interesting because on the ground level, we've kind of seen, especially Coffeezilla has done a lot of work kind of covering not just stock market and social media scams, but all kinds of scams. So we've seen a lot of it kind of on the ground level, and we've all kind of just been waiting. Well, when's the SEC going to get involved with some of these things, some of these more unregulated kind of areas? And it seems to be finally happening on a big scale. Yeah, $100 million stock manipulation scheme is massive. So
it's happening, everybody. We can rejoice.
Yes.
Social media influencers that just screw over people and their followers and do stupid pump and dumps or stock manipulation schemes are actually getting charged now by the SEC, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I just hope that it continues.
Yeah, it's a long overdue cleanup because I mean, there's obviously such a wide variety of content out there in finance, and it can be hard for some people to figure out who to trust and who not to trust, and how to determine that. And so any kind of regulation and crackdown on some of the sketchier parts of the whole content arena is definitely welcomed. So some of the people. So there's 8 influencers were. None of these are influencers that I had actually heard of before. So this isn't any big names that maybe some of you have heard of some of these names, but PJ Matlock, Mr. Zach Morris, what is that? Oh Tommy, Notorious Alerts.
Hey Tommy.
Oh Hey Tommy, Notorious Alerts. If you're following someone with the name Notorious Alerts, I mean,
you're asking for it.
That's a red flag right there. Hugh Henney, Laid Back, and Ultra Calls. As the kind of the handles, social media handles for the influencers who were running these scams. What they
actually did. Does it say what they actually did? I mean, I just saw this thing floating around, this headline floating around, and all the Patrick Boyles and the Richard Coffins of the world kind of commenting on it.
Yeah.
But I don't actually know what they did. What do they do?
Yeah, I haven't. Yeah, I mean, this just broke, I think, this morning, right? So I haven't had a chance to really look at it. But just looking at the official filing from the SEC, they said that those 8 individuals used social media to amass a large following of novice investors and then took advantage of their following by repeatedly feeding them a steady diet of misinformation, which resulted in fraudulent profits of approximately $100 million. They went on to say, today's actions expose the true motive of these alleged fraudsters and serves as another warning that investors should be wary of unsolicited advice they encounter online. So my guess is from that statement that they were likely receiving payments to pump and dump stocks. $100 million in total is an astounding amount of money. And I had a quick look, and stock manipulation has for each count of stock manipulation, it has a charge up to 15 years in prison. So if found guilty,
Ooh.
So it's a very serious crime. And given the amount of money involved, if they're found guilty, I would imagine they would serve a considerable amount of time in prison. So This is massive, and as I said, well overdue. And I mean, this is
overdue. Hamish.
100 million is a lot, but it really is a drop in the bucket of some of the stuff that we see. So it's welcomed, but unfortunately, because social media and finance is so new, it's similar to cryptocurrency. It's just so unregulated at the moment. And there's a lot of people taking advantage of the fact that there's novice investors involved with an unregulated kind of sketchy market. And that kind of, that tends to breed these kinds of scams, unfortunately.
Honestly, I just hope that this kind of thing just puts the fear of God into some of these people that just don't act, some of these creators that just don't act honestly. And it just makes them stop out of pure fear. Like, if that's all that happens, then I still think that's a win. Because there are so many creators that just do this dodgy crap.
Yeah.
But anyway, hopefully the SEC continues to look into influencers and continues to take down the ones that are deceptive and misleading, because there are quite a few.
Yes.
All right, Hamish, that turned into a news story in itself. What are we talking about today? We're talking about Microsoft and Activision-Blizzard. Ooh, there's big news there.
Uh-oh.
Also, you would have heard recently that Sam Bankman-Fried just got arrested. Uh-oh. So we're going to be talking about that. UK inflation, US inflation, Federal Reserve rate hikes. There's a lot to talk about.
Yes.
I have a feeling there's maybe not that many big news stories, but the news stories that we do have, we'll probably talk about for quite a while. So with that said, Hamish, who is our lovely sponsor for today?
Today's episode is sponsored by Sharesight, which is an application you can use to track the performance of your stock portfolio. So you can bring in all of your trades either automatically by connecting your broker to Sharesight, or you can download your trades using Excel or add them in one by one. However you want to do it, once you do that, it will track all the gains and losses in your portfolio. So capital gains, dividends. If you have dividend reinvestment plans, it will do those calculations for you. Currency gains if you're buying shares internationally or you hold foreign currencies. And then you can also use it for when it comes to tax time. So Sharesight generates up to 12 different reports that can be used to track the performance of your portfolio, as well as use the tax time to work out things such as capital gains, dividend income, and more. At the moment, you can try Sharesight for free by heading over to sharesight.com/young-investors. That's site spelled SIGHT, sharesight.com/young-investors. So use that link. You can sign up to a free plan and track up to 10 holdings, so ETF stocks, that kind of thing, for as long as you want. Or you can also use that link to sign up to a paid plan for more features. And if you do that, you'll get 4 months off an annual subscription. It's a great deal and it's a great service. I've been using it for almost 6 years now, I think. It's fantastic. And just a reminder that some of the tax benefits for the reporting doesn't just apply to Australia and New Zealand. You can check out their website to see where else that applies. So if tax time is upon you, you can take a look at Sharesight to see how it can help you out.
Indeed. All right, we've got to start with Sam Bankman-Fried. We have to.
Sammy.
FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried arrested in the Bahamas ahead of possible extradition to the US.
Oh, no. Well, I mean, oh, yes, but oh, no for him.
Oh, no for him, yeah. Look, I've had a bad month. It's fair to say. Yes, you have, sir, and it's gonna get worse. So the founder, I'm gonna read you. I've got three news article sources that I'm reading from here. So let's just get into it. The founder of bankrupt cryptocurrency exchange FTX has been arrested in the Bahamas ahead of possible extradition to the United States. The U.S. Attorney's Office confirmed that Bankman-Fried was arrested in the Bahamas at the request of the U.S. government. In a statement, U.S. Attorney Damian Williams said the arrest was based on a sealed indictment that's been filed by the Southern District of New York. Well, the U.S. prosecutors have since unsealed their indictment, accusing Bankman-Fried of widespread fraud. The indictment in the U.S. District Court in Manhattan charges Bankman-Fried with 8 criminal counts: conspiracy to commit wire fraud and securities fraud, individual charges of securities fraud and wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to avoid campaign finance regulations. Prosecutors allege in the indictment that the former billionaire was engaging in criminal activity that began as far back as 2019. That's when FTX started, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. And continued through to last month. Bankman-Fried deliberately and knowingly, quote, agreed with others to defraud customers of FTX.com by misappropriating those customers' deposits and using those deposits to pay expenses and debts of Alameda Research, the indictment alleges. It also accuses Bankman-Fried of conspiring with others to defraud FTX lenders, quote, by providing false and misleading information to those lenders regarding Alameda Research's financial condition. Oh boy. Thoughts?
There we go.
Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, it's just interesting to see it come down. Obviously, prosecutors have, I guess, been working on this for some time, and I over the past few weeks, I've always been kind of saying, "Oh, why haven't they arrested him yet?" But I guess I should have probably conceded the fact that it is a very complex thing to prosecute. White collar crimes are very technical, and it's very difficult to get evidence to do so. So it kind of makes sense that it would take some time for them to build a case, especially since Sam didn't immediately come out and say that he was guilty. He was actually saying that he was innocent and it was all just a big mistake. So it makes sense that it took a little bit of time to come down. But yeah, this is going to be a fascinating one to see if they are able to prove that he intentionally lied to investors or to FTX customers. He's going to probably make a case that it was all just an accident, that he mislabeled accounts, that the money got lost, and that while, yes, the money was moved from FTX or wasn't in FTX and was in Alameda, but that it wasn't intentional, that he didn't do it on purpose. So it will be interesting to see once this evidence starts to come out about whether Sam knew.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because there's going to be a lot of media outlets with egg on their face with all the positive articles they've written about Sam. But I don't know what the go is here. I'm not 100% sure, but it definitely seems as though FTX or Sam Bankman-Fried is definitely giving donations to the media outlets to try and save his reputation through news articles. It's kind of weird. Like he could be in some serious trouble here. And even people like, who was it, Bill Ackman? And like, look, I think that he's telling the truth, guys. You know, he seems like he's all right. Kevin O'Leary or whatever said the same thing. Well, I'm pretty sure. It's like, why is so, I don't understand why so many people are like coming to the rescue, you know?
Yeah, well, did you see? So, Kevin O'Leary is still a paid spokesperson for FTX, and he just recently did an interview where someone asked him point blank, "Are you getting paid by FTX?" And he's like, "Yeah, they paid me $15 million."
Wow.
So, I mean, that's
so crazy.
That's what I said. I always said, well, what is Sam got on these guys that they're defending him? But I mean, with Kevin O'Leary, he's just being paid, so he has to do it. Yeah. But it's his opinion is kind of worthless then. It's like,
yeah, it's absolutely worthless. But it's so interesting how this strategy from FTX was just to appear like their strategy was to appear trustworthy and legitimate by just using as much money as they could possibly throw at people just to boost their reputation, whether it be YouTubers and him appear. Like there was a YouTube video made how this guy is the most, well-hearted, like kindest billionaire you've ever met, that kind of stuff. And like all the media was always so positive about him, but there must just be so much money just being spent on maintaining a reputation that is just like completely fabricated. And like he was sponsoring, I can't remember, what sports team were they sponsoring? FTX was like sponsoring sports teams and all sorts of things.
I think it was the Miami Heat's basketball stadium, I want to say.
The basketball, okay.
I'm not sure if it's
Mercedes Formula One team.
Yeah. Tom Brady.
So much stuff, but it's just a crazy, I don't know, just situation of money being thrown to build a reputation that's just completely fabricated.
Yeah.
But it's all coming undone now. Sorry, you want to say something?
I was just going to say, it's crazy how far that marketing can kind of take you. And I think it really just kind of throws consumers into a lot of uncertainty, I think, because you do think, I saw an article from Nielsen, which does kind of marketing data, and they said that sports team promotions and advertisements are the most trusted by far out of any other type of advertising medium. And it makes sense. I mean, I would probably say the same thing. I mean, if I see a sports team or a stadium like Marvel Stadium or whatever it is, you trust that brand because it's such a massive brand deal that you assume that a huge amount of due diligence has gone into it. And that's, being completely thrown out the window. With FTX.com Stadium and Lewis Hamilton with FTX on his and it does I think raise a lot of questions about trusting these brands that are so big. It is kind of crazy.
I actually think very little due diligence gets done.
Yeah.
That's my wild theory. I think that when you think about all of these, even like in the stock market, you hear about Michael Burry in 2005, 6, 7, 8, that kind of time. It's like, I really think that although people like to convince themselves that they've done their DD, I really think very, very little due diligence actually gets done in the world.
Yeah, and especially...
I think people see dollar signs and they just go with it, and they kind of fabricate a story as to having done due diligence when they actually haven't.
Yeah.
That's my wild theory.
And I mean, when it comes to a savvy fraudster, it can be very difficult. I mean, we've seen massive frauds, Enron and Theranos we spoke about recently. I mean, if someone is a savvy fraudster, if they know what they're doing, then it's very difficult for people to investors or brands or whoever it is to figure out what's going on. So. Yeah. But especially with like a low level of due diligence on top of that, then it's very difficult.
Hamish, you want to know just how badly this company was being run from the inside?
Yeah, tell me. Make me feel.
You've probably heard all this, but you know how we're talking about that congressional hearing on whether Sam Bankman-Fried was going to come in? Well, obviously not, because he just got arrested. But the company's so FTX's new CEO, John J. Ray, testified at the House Financial Services Committee hearing that we were talking about last week. He told lawmakers that the company had, quote, no record keeping whatsoever, using bookkeeping software QuickBooks to track its multi-billion-dollar portfolio.
That's crazy. I did see that. That's an insane one. It was pretty funny to hear him say. He was like, "Oh, nothing against QuickBooks. It's a great company, but not for managing a multi-billion-dollar portfolio."
we should say nothing against QuickBooks.
No, I use QuickBooks as well. So
exactly right.
QuickBooks is great.
You wouldn't expect, say, like a multi-billion-dollar corporation to run their accounting off of like QuickBooks. No,
it's a small business accounting bookkeeping website software, which it's great, but not for
cost effective, that kind of thing. Yeah,
exactly.
So he said, quote, "This is really just old-fashioned embezzlement. This is just taking money from customers and using it for your own purpose. It's not sophisticated at all." Ray said in a blistering testimony that lasted more than 4 hours, quote, "Sophisticated, perhaps in the way that they were hiding something, frankly, right in front of their eyes. This is just plain old embezzlement. Old school," he said. So there you go. And to be honest, I don't quite know the background of the new CEO. But I don't know how he's come to be. But it's good that he's just like, nah, I'm not hiding anything. This is crazy. This is just what went on. It's good because it's like it had nothing to do with him. So I'm glad that he, instead of being like, "Oh look, no, we're going to have to do a thorough review before I can answer that question," he's just like, "Nah, this is pretty obvious that this happened." Yeah, he's not holding back, kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess he kind of has to take that role at this point.
Yeah, but it makes him look better because he's just being like, "This clearly wasn't me. This is the people before me. This is the truth."
Yeah.
So it's good. Now nobody is skeptical of this new guy. He told the House Financial Services Committee that the cryptocurrency exchange founder Sam Bankman-Fried lied when he tweeted that the company, quote, "has enough to cover all client holdings."
Oops.
The since-deleted tweet, oopsies. The since-deleted tweet was published by Bankman-Fried on November the 7th, just days before he stepped down as CEO of FTX and his company filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Quote, "Absolutely not," Ray said after the committee member representative Richie Torres asked whether that tweet was accurate. "So the statement was false?" Torres asked. "Yes," Ray replied.
You know what's kind of funny?
Oh, dear.
I wonder if there's ever a challenge to some of these deleted tweets, because obviously that people have screenshots of them before they were deleted. So we know that they happened.
Yeah, we know.
But there's also so many fake tweets and that sort of thing going around. So I wonder if anyone ever, like, how do they, I know that those tweets did happen. I'm not saying that they didn't happen. They happened. We know they happened. But how do they kind of like prove it? Couldn't they
How do you verify a prior tweet that's been deleted?
Like couldn't Sam argue that they're fake and that you can't prove, I don't know.
Maybe.
Like I know a lot of different people have them, but like
got to get into the Twitter mainframe.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, do they have to like
Elon Musk?
Yeah, do they have
was his tweet real?
Do they have like a deleted archive or something? I don't know.
I'm sure it's kind of like how if there's, for example, a legal issue, you can access your like activity history of Facebook and of all social media, like Instagram, Snapchat, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Even if you've tried to delete it all, it still exists.
That makes
and then
sense.
if there's like a legal dispute, you can actually go in and request, look, I need my full history, or you can request, I want the full history of this.
Yeah.
And it's still there. So I'm sure that a similar thing will happen with Twitter.
Yeah.
But yeah, what else happened here? Bankman-Fried allowed. This is back. You remember you were talking about some loophole getting money out through the Bahamas?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Have a listen to this. Bankman-Fried allowed about 1,500 people in the Bahamas to withdraw roughly $100 million 24 hours before the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, while other investors were locked out of their accounts, Ray confirmed to lawmakers. Ray told lawmakers much was still uncertain, but, quote, "What we do know is that the liquidation proceeding in the Bahamas was filed effectively hours before the Chapter 11 proceeding. During that time period, the accounts were unfrozen just in the Bahamas, and over $100 million was released to approximately 1,500 customers in the Bahamas." There you go.
Almost
Which
sounds...
is kind of... Yeah, I'll let you say that.
I was going to say, it almost sounds like a bribe. Like, it sounds like... Did you see? I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was a he basically told officials, Bahamian officials, that he was going to do this, and the way it's worded just very much reads like it's a bribe so that he doesn't get extradited to the US. But I'm no legal expert, but
you can take it a lot of different ways. It's also interesting that Sam Bankman-Fried himself ran FTX out of the Bahamas, so. Who were the 1,500 people in the Bahamas that got to withdraw their funds?
Wouldn't be his accounts at all, no.
Wouldn't be his friends, family, his close relative. I don't know. That is speculation. That's just us throwing pies in the sky.
We wouldn't do that on the Young Investors podcast. We wouldn't speculate.
Allegedly.
No, we would allegedly.
No, we wouldn't speculate. No. But there's some questions to be answered there. I think I'd quite like to ask him some questions about that. There was a lot more in the 4-hour hearing, but they were kind of the main things that the media picked up on. So yes, the plot thickens. Hamish Hodder, the plot thickens.
All right, I want to take us to a bit of a funny story just to lighten the mood after we've all lost billions of dollars in FTX. Hopefully not too many of us.
Hopefully not.
No,
I hope not. I think out of our audience, chances are quite minimal. A limited people amount. Lost money in FTX.
Yeah, we hope. But this is a bit of a mix of a story from a couple of weeks ago, and there's some updates this week. But we're in the movie world. Avatar 2 just had its premiere and is launching this weekend. And there's some funny kind of numbers and maths behind how it needs to perform in order to make money.
Really?
Essentially, this is, of course, the long-awaited, I guess some people were probably waiting for this, sequel to the 2009 movie, which was the biggest box office hit of all time. So Avatar 1 still sits at the top. It grossed $2.9 billion at the box office, which is astounding. It was the biggest of all time and is followed by, do you know what the others are?
I don't know the order, but I would definitely put Star Wars 7 in there. Yep. I know Star Wars 7 was right up there.
That's number 4. Any idea on 2 and 3?
Avengers, the last Avengers movie would definitely be in there.
It's number 2. Number 3?
I don't know what else.
Number 3 was Titanic. So all of those 4 grossed over $2 billion, which is quite astounding. So Avatar 2's got a bit of a... It's got big boots to fill if it's going to perform.
It's got a high bar.
There's a high bar for it to match the first release. It is expected in the US to make $150 to $175 million this weekend. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that plays out. That would make it only the third largest opening this year after Doctor Strange and Black Panther. Although, interestingly, Avatar 1 only made $77 million on the first weekend, but then ran in theaters for almost a year, which is pretty unprecedented. What? So yeah, it had, the quote is unparalleled staying power. So it stayed in theaters from December of 2009 till August of 2010. So even though it didn't actually do that well in the first week, it had a long lifetime in the box office, and that's ultimately what drove it to the $2.9 billion gross bookings
that's
in
insane.
total.
Imagine being like, oh, you seen Avatar 2? No, I'll probably go see it in the movies maybe in July. Yeah, July.
Yeah, I'll go see it next year.
Out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so...
Anyway, sorry.
So Avatar 2 is expected to do very well this weekend, relative to the first one. But the worst part of this is that the cost of producing Avatar 2 is actually eye-watering. And we don't have a true estimate of the actual budget of the film, although some are estimating $250 million. We don't have an actual figure. We haven't been told this yet. However, filmmaker James Cameron apparently told Disney and 20th Century Fox executives who produced this that the budget would be so high that it is, quote, the worst business case in movie history.
Yeah, I saw him say that.
He went on to say, you'd have to be the third or fourth highest grossing film in history and that's just to break even. So putting that in the context of the 4 highest grossing films we just spoke about, all $2 billion or above, the film, according to the showrunner, needs to make $2 billion for Disney to break even on it.
Is it Disney?
It is Disney, yeah. Disney and 20th Century Fox.
Right. Yeah, it's...
So they've got a little bit of a bar, you know, that they've only got to be the 4th highest of all time in order to break even on this at the box office. So, I
think, I mean, you'd want it. Firstly, it has to be a good movie. It has to be, to get even close. First hurdle, it has to be a good movie. But early reports are that it is quite good from the early screenings. So hopefully that works in their favor. But then also, you have to have the same cinema environment that we had when the first one came out. And I just don't think that we've got that. I just don't think we've got it. I don't think there's going to be people that are going to flood into the movie theaters. I think the competitive landscape and the cinema landscape is like completely different now.
Yeah. Well, that's the interesting part, I think, because of course Disney, which will be running this in the theaters, has Disney Plus, and there is a question of, you know, in the recent past they've had their 45-day theatrical window, and then they've released stuff onto Disney Plus to say, hey, when we make great movies, you can go see them at the theaters, but relatively quickly we'll have them available for you at, you know, in home entertainment. But you know, if they do that with Avatar 2, there's no way that it gets anywhere near the performance of the first film, which ran for 8 to 9 months in the theaters. So it will be really interesting to see. It's exactly kind of what you're pointing to, is that the environment is very different now. A lot of people kind of just wait for things to come out because they come out a lot quicker than they did when they were coming out on DVD, where you might have to wait a year or more. So it will be interesting to see how they decide to play this. They might decide to do the 45 days and then have it in the theaters and on the streaming service at the same time, just parallel, or they might extend the theater window to try and, you know, milk a lot out of the box office and then put it on the streaming service later. It'll be interesting to see. You know, kind of how that plays out. But certainly you would imagine the environment is a lot different back then as it is today, where 2009 there was really not much home entertainment besides movie rentals, which was a lot more of a bulkier, expensive process than it is today.
It's a more complicated equation now, because instead of just thinking like box office, you really have to think about, okay, what's the value of Avatar 2 on Disney Plus in terms of new subscribers, in terms of people staying there and paying for another month or another year of subscription revenue. It's like, it's a lot murkier. It's a lot murkier. It's like a brand trying to figure out the value of like brand advertising as opposed to like call to action based advertising. It's just so hard to actually figure it out.
Yeah, like
I don't know. I still confident. Like Avatar, the first Avatar was so huge. Like I immediately put Avatar 2 up there with like has the potential for a Star Wars Episode 7, for an Avengers Endgame, for like Titanic style movie. I definitely don't doubt that it has the potential to achieve this kind of success in some way, shape, or form. I just don't know if all that success is going to be box office, just because of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, because, you know, back in 2009, it had to make almost all of the money at least a very large part of the money was going to come from box office, whereas, today...
100%. Or selling DVDs. Like, how many DVDs are you going to sell?
And they don't necessarily need to cover the budget with box office. I mean, Netflix doesn't cover the budget of any of their shows at box office because they don't run really anything at box office, a couple of things very shortly, but... So it's a very different equation. You're right. They could, put it on their streaming service, drive more subscriber growth, and cover it that way. So, it will be interesting to see. Hopefully, it's good. I mean, they've got as I said, big boots to fill. So
very big. Yeah, apparently it's good. Like very kind of emotional, family-driven kind of story, which you'd kind of expect. Guess we'll see. Visual effects will be crazy, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right. Should we move on?
Yeah. What have we got?
Let's talk about this. Big news, Hamish. Microsoft takeover of Activision-Blizzard has been blocked.
Oof. That hurts.
Yeah. There's a lot of investors. Warren Buffett himself, he was betting on this going through, but so far it has not. So this actually came from the FTC itself. So I'll read you this. This is actually quite a bit. So bear with me. We'll talk through this and then we'll discuss it after. So the FTC said the Federal Trade Commission is seeking to block technology giant Microsoft Corp from acquiring leading video game developer Activision-Blizzard and its blockbuster gaming franchises such as Call of Duty, alleging that the $69 billion deal, Microsoft's largest ever and the largest ever in the video gaming industry, would enable Microsoft to suppress competitors to its Xbox gaming consoles and its rapidly growing subscription content and cloud gaming business. In a complaint issued today, the FTX, lol, the FTC even, FTX on the brain. In a complaint issued today, the FTC pointed to Microsoft's record of acquiring and using valuable gaming content to suppress competition from rival consoles, including its acquisition of ZeniMax, parent company of Bethesda Softworks, a well-known game developer. Microsoft decided to make several of Bethesda's titles, including Starfield and Redfall, Microsoft exclusives, despite assurances it had given to European antitrust authorities that it had no incentive to withhold games from rival consoles. Activision is one of only a very small number of top video game developers in the world that create and publish high-quality video games for multiple devices, including video game consoles, PCs, and mobile devices. It produces some of the most iconic and popular video game titles, including Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Diablo, and Overwatch, and has millions of monthly active users around the world, according to the FTC's complaint. Activision currently has a strategy of offering its games on many devices regardless of producer. But that could change if the deal is allowed to proceed. With control over Activision's blockbuster franchises, Microsoft would have both the means and motive to harm competition by manipulating Activision's pricing, degrading Activision's game quality or player experience on rival consoles and gaming services, changing the terms and timing of access to Activision's content, or withholding content from competitors entirely, resulting in harm to consumers. The commission vote to issue the complaint was 3-1, with Commissioner Christine S. Wilson voting no. There you go, Hamish. Basically, I could have made that shorter, but I just wanted to read the whole thing. Basically, they think that they're going to stifle competition.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. We didn't really know which way this was going to fall, and these big acquisitions can kind of go either way. But it is interesting to see in this kind of space because Microsoft isn't a monopoly. They do have considerable market power, but they don't have a monopoly on video games. And it's kind of the same as the movie market in that nobody can have a monopoly on good content. It's not possible for you to have a monopoly on good film or good TV shows or even good game studios. So it is kind of strange to see it in this way, especially since we've seen the FTC approve massive film studio mergers and acquisitions time and time again. And I kind of view both in a similar way. I mean, they just allowed Disney and 20th Century Fox to merge. I think it was the biggest merger of all time. You've had Viacom CBS merge. Disney's bought a bunch of film studios. Like, they've allowed a huge amount of consolidation in that market. And I don't really know how video gaming is different, especially as we move towards cloud gaming, where the consoles aren't really a barrier to entry, where you probably eventually will be able to play the games with a subscription on a TV without a console. So I'm not entirely sure how this is different to that.
Yep. Yeah, so that was exactly my question. I was just thinking, okay, sure. It's fair enough if you want to say you want to stop a pharmaceutical company from owning all the drugs and obviously stifling competition, raising prices on life-saving products, and that kind of thing, and life-saving medication. But is it actually that much of an issue? Firstly, for the points you said, Microsoft isn't a monopoly in video games. But also, we're not talking about something we're talking about like a small luxury, We're not talking about life-saving medication where you need it or something like that. We're talking about whether you can play Call of Duty, you know? So I don't know. Do the same standards apply to both situations kind of thing? Because surely it's just like, we're just talking about Call of Duty and like World of Warcraft here. It's not like anybody's going to die if this deal goes through, or they're going to raise prices on medications or something, like, you know?
I mean, yeah, there's definitely a different standard, I think, to essential services. There should definitely be a separate standard. But I mean, in both cases, you don't want there to be a monopoly. Like, you don't want, one video game, one company, Microsoft, let's say, that owns every film studio, every gaming studio. And then, a new little studio comes up and they're making far better games because Microsoft is making Call of Duty terrible, and they're jacking up prices because there's no competition. And this little film studio makes incredible stuff and they start getting a lot of revenue. And then Microsoft says, well, we're just going to buy you. And then they just buy them. And then there's still a monopoly, and then they make that studio worse. You don't want one company. And in some cases, even two companies dictating market can be very bad for consumers. But I don't really see how that's the case in the video game space as it currently exists. There's not one or even two large competitors. There's a number of multi-billion-dollar gaming companies, and then a huge rest of the market. So, I'm not sure. I can't say I've looked at the gaming space all that much from an investment perspective, but as far as I can tell, it looks very similar to the film space, which I have looked at, and they've allowed consolidation in that space for decades. Yeah. So
I just don't quite understand.
Yeah.
I don't quite understand why they've done it. It's like, surely the FTC has better things to do. Like, surely there are industries where they actually should really be looking into some of these mergers and acquisitions and stuff. It's like, I don't understand why they care so much about video games, Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really get it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it is crazy. The stock price didn't go down for Activision, which was
it's weird.
kind of surprising. I guess I don't know. Because I'm pretty sure it went up on the news of the acquisition. So I would have expected it to return back to where it was. But maybe it's not over for this acquisition. Kind of crazy.
I don't quite know, but I saw a headline. I've forgotten it now, and I haven't put it in the document, so I apologize. But I saw like some headline that some FTC equivalent, whatever the equivalent is over in like Europe, just like slammed the FTC, saying like, you guys are so stupid. Like, we approved this. Why are you guys not? They're so dumb. So I don't know. Like, why now they got beef between them or something. So maybe we haven't heard the last of this. I don't know what Microsoft can do.
Yeah, I think.
Well, I guess it goes through the courts, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, I think.
I think the FTC is seeking to block, and then I guess it's Microsoft versus FTC, right?
It's a weird situation. So the FTC actually sues Microsoft. That's kind of the court proceedings that happen. So they sue Microsoft to say that it can't happen. So then the courts, it'll be Microsoft versus the FTC to decide whether it will go through. So I guess it's not over, but interesting. There's definitely a longer timeline for how the proceedings will play out. So,
all right, have a stab. Who wins, FTC or Microsoft?
FTC. Never bet against. Don't bet against the US government.
I reckon Microsoft will win. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, look, looking at like the facts that I know, which I'll admit is probably not all the facts, but for the facts that I do know, it does. To me, it doesn't look like an anti-competitive acquisition, but we will see.
We'll see.
Who knows?
Yeah, true. Fair enough. Don't bet against the FTC, but I also don't think it seems that anti-competitive. I think Sony will just have a cry, but really, they should have been doing the exact same strategy that Microsoft's doing. So they've just dropped the ball.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty clear at this point that the value in gaming, at least long run, maybe not over the next 5 years, but the true value over 10, 15, 20 years will be in owning the film studios and either licensing those games to cloud-based software like Microsoft, or running their own cloud-based gaming platform. Very similar to what film has kind of undergone first. So I think that's very clear. So why Sony has been kind of slow to move on that, I'm not sure. But very interesting space.
All right, Hamesh, take us into the boring part of the podcast.
Let's
we talk all about, you guessed it, inflation.
Yeah, we've actually got a lot. It was all happening this week around the world in inflation.
We've been going for, by the way, you can't see your waveform at the moment. We've been going for 45 minutes.
Okay. All right.
So I'll still got some time.
Yeah, okay. Sweet. I won't drag us out for too long on the inflation stuff, but we've got UK, we've got Europe, we've got the US, we've got Fed hikes, we've got the ECB doing hikes. We've got all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, a lot this week.
Yeah, it was the week of central banks this week. So we'll start with the UK. The UK's inflation declined. Woohoo! We got a decline.
Wow.
So it reached 10.7%, down from 11.1% recorded last month. So that's a welcome decline in the UK. The month-over-month increase was still fairly moderate at 0.4% month over month. The Office of National Statistics said the largest upward contributions came from housing and household services, which was principally electricity, gas, and other fuels, as well as food and non-alcoholic beverages. So yeah, pretty much the same as always. And the largest downward contributions for the month came from transport, particularly motor fuels, with rising prices in restaurants, cafes, and pubs making the largest, partially offsetting upward contribution. On this news, the Bank of England, the UK's central bank, is expected to hike interest rates by 50 basis points, 0.5%, at the next meeting, bringing the official rate to 3.5%. So yeah, the UK is definitely, if we're looking relatively at all the major countries that we or regions that we look at, yeah, they're definitely behind the curb on interest rate hikes and have some of the highest inflation. So they've definitely got some one of the trickiest environments at the moment.
That's true, because they're also going through a proper cost of living crisis with their energy situation.
Yeah. That's not to say that every region can do the exact same policy. There's different factors and different reliances on different countries for energy and that sort of thing. So it just so happens that they're in the toughest position. The ECB, the European Central Bank, is also expected to hike 50 basis points this week, which already reflects them slowing down their rate hikes. So they did 75 basis points last month. They're going to slow to 50 basis points, which is interesting because inflation in Eurozone just hit 10%. So they're already slowing, which the ECB out of all of these regions has done the least on interest rate hikes. I can't exactly remember what the official rate was, but it was very low. And the ECB believes they're doing this because they believe that inflation has already peaked. So even though their inflation rate is still very, very high, still double digits, they think that the worst is behind them.
I hope they're right.
Yeah, we do hope they're right because, if they're wrong and they begin to slow their rate hikes, that is a disaster. Let's hope that they are correct.
It looks like they are right. It looks like they are.
Well, that seems to be the consensus kind of everywhere at the moment, is that inflation is starting to come off. And the same is true in the US, which we got US data this week. Inflation declined again, down to 7.1% year over year. The month-over-month increase was just 0.1%, tiny month-over-month increase, and it represents the fifth consecutive decline in annual inflation, fifth consecutive month decline. So
that's what we need. You need like month-over-month of like that low, because annualized that's 1.2. So
that's 1.2%.
That's what you need.
Yeah.
That's what you need.
Very
interesting. So that's what did it peak at? I can't even remember what it peaked at.
In the US, it was 9.1.
9.1. Okay, so it's coming down.
Yep.
It's coming down. Hopefully it continues. I think Elon Musk said something recently on Twitter. He was like, man, the Federal Reserve would make a grave mistake if they raised interest rates by another 50 basis points or something like that. I was like, all right, mate.
Yeah,
and I think Jerome's listening though.
No, I listened to a little bit of the Fed meeting, which, not the Fed meeting, but the conference that he did after the Fed meeting. So at the Fed meeting, they raised interest rates another 0.5%, which again represents a slowdown from the 75 basis point hikes that they've been doing recently, and brings the rate to 4.25 to 4.5%. As the official rate. So yeah, the US is kind of leading the way in terms of rate hikes. And at the meeting, definitely didn't do what Elon Musk was hoping. Jerome continued to talk about how they have a pretty persistent goal of getting inflation down to 2%, and they plan to continue to do rate hikes for the foreseeable future to get that to be the case. And they also plan to continue to reduce the Fed's balance sheet with quantitative tightening. They spoke a little bit about how the rate hikes seem to have had an impact on consumer and business demand, as economic growth has slowed considerably since last year. They actually projected just 0.5% growth in GDP next year, which is, well under the long run average, which it's not negative, but it's certainly a massive slowdown. However, there are still parts of the economy that are running really hot, and the main one is the labor market. So the labor market still has the lowest unemployment in 50 years, which is kind of crazy. So even with the rate hikes that have gone through, businesses still are demanding far more. There's so much demand for employees than there are employees available or people that could work. So that's continuing to push wages up a lot. And it was interesting to hear him discuss because 55% of the core inflation figure is what's called non-housing core services. And the biggest cost in relation to those services is labor. So unless the labor market cools somewhat and they can get that unemployment rate up a little bit and off historical half-century lows, unless they can do that, a large part of the inflation figure won't be coming down. So that's kind of what was spoken about at the meeting. They spoke about a bunch of other things, but those were kind of the notable. I
just wanted to
the notable highs
jump in as well because I did actually find the Elon Musk tweet. He said, if the Fed raises, this is on the 10th of December, by the way, if the Fed raises rates again next week, the recession will be greatly amplified. That is his viewpoint. Interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, look, the one thing that was interesting that the Fed essentially said was that when he gave his projections, he said, and just keep in mind that every month we've changed our projections essentially. So inflation, we've been consistently wrong on inflation, essentially said, and we've been consistently wrong on where we think interest rates will finish and where GDP growth will be. So while this is kind of the best available estimate we have, we've changed it every month. So, keep in mind that our projections today very well may not reflect what actually happens over the next year. And it was really interesting to hear him kind of acknowledge that because that is really important to note that even though he says there won't be a recession next year from the available data right now, who knows how this backlog of interest rate increases will go on to affect the economy next year. We really don't know. So, but so far, some very positive signs that inflation is cooling. So that's refreshing, at least for the last few months compared to the beginning of the year or last year.
It certainly seems like it's a trend now. Like sometimes we get the occasional month which goes against what the trend is, but this actually does look like it's forming a new trend and inflation is coming down, which is good. I'm all for it, Hamish. I'm all for it.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, let's. Is that all we had to talk about for inflation?
Yeah, I think.
All right, cool. Well, I think that's all of our stories. Wow, we actually got through it all. Have I missed something? No, I haven't missed anything. All right, should we do some Q&A?
Yeah, what have we got?
Did we... Sorry, this is poor planning on my part. I'm going to have to ask you this right now on air. Did we answer this question already? I was going to ask you that off air, but I completely forgot.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
We did answer. Okay, well, did we answer this one? Oh my gosh,
we didn't answer that. Remember. We didn't answer that first one.
Okay.
What does it say?
Well, let's do this one then. If you were the number one content creator within this field, how would you run your channel differently and how would you branch out from this platform? That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Have you thought about that?
I mean, not really. I think the content would be different because just naturally, I mean, if you just kind of logically, if you were the largest creator, then you would be serving a much broader audience. So the content that I'm creating now obviously doesn't service, that broader audience. It services a kind of a smaller subsection of that audience. So naturally the content would be different, but I don't really have any ideas of how it would be different. I would hope that I'm just continuing to make content that resonates with a core audience, but is also content that I enjoy making. And I think that does come through in the content. The more you enjoy the content that you're making, the more regularly you'll put out content, the more effort you'll put into the content, and the better your presenting comes through in the videos. So I guess that more of that. But I'm not sure exactly if there's no specific types of content that I don't make now that I want to make, or anything, at least anything off the top of my head. Do you have any thoughts on that?
If there's a difference in content, I don't know if it's so much the content. If I was the number one creator within this field, how would I run my channel differently? I think that I would just, because obviously if I was the number one creator, I would have millions and millions of subscribers. So I think, and millions of viewers as well. So I think the thing that would, I think, look different would be my corporate structure, and like I would have teams of people. See, that's the thing. A lot of people in this space, they get so big, but they're still like one-man bands. So I think that I would take the opposite approach. And if I was the number one creator, I would just have teams of people just talking about content strategy, but also like, a big like fact-checking team. Not saying that I don't do my research. We all do our research, but just to have a team that makes sure that everything you say is 100% flawless. Yeah. That there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I think, I'd obviously have maybe a legal I think the bigger I get, maybe I would just be like more focused on risk mitigation, maybe. As weird as that sounds. But no, I don't think maybe my content would be different, because it would have to serve a wider audience. So you'd probably have like a content strategy team that would tell you, no, yeah, okay, you want to make this video, but it's not what these people want to see. So there'd have to be a balance of that, figuring out what content to make.
So you would essentially lean into more of the strategy that you've kind of deployed, especially over the last year, which is to kind of build out your team and that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
You'd definitely lean more into that. Yeah.
Well, it would be a big thing. Like, if I was the biggest content creator in the space, it would be like a big deal. Like whatever I said could potentially impact a lot of people, like a lot of people, more so than what we already have with our own YouTube channel. So I feel like I would feel a great sense of responsibility to not do anything incorrectly, not make mistakes, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like
but also provide people the best videos they could. I don't know. I already kind of think like that, but I think it would just be that next level.
But larger. Yeah. All right.
Go from this one?
Yeah. What does that even say at the start? Tesla
share repurchase plan.
Tesla share repurchase program, increasing revenue as much as they did whilst only seeking operating expense rise of 2%. That ROIC is crazy. Wouldn't you prefer the excess capital to be reinvested? Let's assume no dodgy accounting. Lol. Yeah. Let's always assume that, hopefully.
On the topic of share repurchase plan, which we were talking about quite a while ago, this question, unfortunately, we haven't gotten to it until now. So they're increasing revenue a lot, but they only saw OPEX rise by like 2%. That return on invested capital is crazy. Wouldn't you expect that they would just put all this extra stuff back into their business? I mean, yes, you definitely would. But it's a question of whether they have the avenues to be able to do that. And that's the main thing that Elon spoke about on probably the most recent earnings call, is that, he was basically asked a question similar to that. And his answer was something like, engineers don't grow on trees, It's like if he had, like, for the talent that he has, or he's trying to look for the grand plans he's trying to achieve, he's not hitting he's not hitting a monetary barrier. He's hitting like a talent barrier. So he would love to obviously reinvest all that money and keep pushing, but he's finding it very difficult because he simply doesn't have the talent and the human resources to actually get it done. So, but yeah, obviously, like when you look at the success of, you know, the scaling of Tesla, and you'd be like, yeah, sure, any money you got, just keep going. Like, don't worry about giving any of that money to me for like the next 10 years because you guys have got a lot to do, you know? Just keep doing it. But yeah, I think when you think realistically, it's like, can they actually put that huge wad of cash to good use? Or if they put it to use, would they just be, you know, less than impressed? Would they just be burning money, essentially, chasing huge growth? I think that's clearly what Elon thinks would happen. Yeah. So that's why he's decided to do this share repurchase plan.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. There's obviously not just monetary limitations on how capital can be deployed. And one way that I've kind of seen this, not related to Tesla, but looking at restaurant companies, if even an incredible restaurant company like Texas Roadhouse, which I mean, we even visited a couple of them, and they were just packed. To go back. They were just packed out the door, full car parks, and not just anecdotally, this is across the case, you know, across the whole US. And you would think, well, and they're producing hundreds of millions in cash flow, and they're paying about half of it out as dividends and doing share repurchases. You might think, well, what the hell are they doing? Just put it all into new restaurants. But there is a limit of lots in good areas becoming available, and the time it takes to develop those lots and to build teams around it. You know, minimum wage and low wage employees that typically fill out those restaurants are in massive demand. There's massive labor shortages, you know, not just in engineering, but across in different areas. So there are physical limitations to how quickly businesses can deploy capital. And in some cases, the best case is just to hold on to it for investors and wait for opportunities. But if the stock is, if the management team believes the stock is cheap, then and they can deploy it at a similar or a better rate of return than they can get from, you know, expanding into a new factory or building a new restaurant or whatever it is, then it makes sense from an investment perspective for them to do so. So yeah.
Cool.
All right.
All good.
That's it. I think we're maxed out on time. Yep. Thanks,
we're
everyone. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them as a comment on the YouTube version of the podcast, or if you're on Spotify, then you can just scroll down below and there'll be a little section where you can ask questions on Spotify as well. And next week, we'll do our best to answer a couple of them towards the end of the episode. Well, actually,
we should say next week is our special episode that we recorded with Tom because we are going to be on holidays. Woo-hoo. So yeah, have a good Christmas, everybody. Have a good holiday period. Get some rest, get some sleep. Hamish, you doing much?
No, rest.
Yeah, chilling out.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, that's the thing. Like Australian Christmas is summery, very hot weather, cricket's on TV.
Yeah.
You know,
stick the barbecue
beers, on. Yeah, barbecues. It's a good vibe. Australian Christmas is a good vibe. Just kicking the feet up, having a barbecue with friends. Yep. Sounds good. But yeah, we do have that special episode coming to you next week, which is a Q&A episode where we sat down with Investing with Tom. So you'll hear that next week. And it was a good chat. It's always a good time when Tom comes on the podcast. I always love having him on. So look out for that next week. And we got to figure out what we're doing for the week after as well.
Yeah.
We're not quite 100% sure yet, but we'll figure something out.
We'll sort it
Otherwise,
out.
we might just have a week off and kick our feet up. But yeah, we'll figure that out. But anyway, guys, I'm rambling now. We can talk about this off air, Hamish. Thanks very much, guys, for tuning in as always. We'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.